who better to change the healthcare system than physicians? Like we know all the pitfalls, we know the holes, we know patients, we know medical care. I mean, we know a lot of stuff. And so I would just say if you're thinking about a particular inefficiency or a problem or a donut hole in the system, I would just tackle it, embrace it, figure out a solution for it, and don't be afraid to go out there and try it. Just do a basic sort of trial for 30, 60, 90 days with a few number of patients and see if you can make a difference.
Hey, it's Jesse Garza with Premier Leadership Podcast, the place where we have real conversations with real leaders. Today, I'm happy to have as my guest Dr. Shamim Shakibai, founder of My PreOp. Shamim, welcome. Thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Jesse. I'm excited to have a discussion with you.
Great, great. I'm looking forward to it as well. I'd definitely looking forward to get into the conversation about the work you're doing with My PreOp. But first, would you mind just kind of sharing a little bit about your story and what led you on this path?
Sure. So I'm a board certified internal medicine physician. Grew up in Southern California, still live in Southern California. Previous to this, I had a hospitalist group, which is basically a group of physicians who practice primarily in the hospital setting. And so I grew that group and I ran that group for about 10 years, sold it to a big physician staffing company back in late 2020. And then I did a little bit of traveling to Central and South America, took some time off, and then decided to start my pre-op with my business partner, Dr. Joshua Lewis, who's also internal medicine physician. And we decided to start it because we saw an opportunity and sort of a hole in the healthcare system when it came to preoperative medical clearance. It just seemed like there was a lot of variability. There weren't really any agreed standards. Nobody was really doing the same thing to a lot of people. And we saw a lot of preventable complications, surgeries getting canceled, surgeries getting delayed, things happening after surgery that probably shouldn't have. So, and, obviously telemedicine had just really made its emergence out from the pandemic. The pandemic was horrific in many ways. But one of the good things that came out of the pandemic was the acceptance and the emergence and the embracing of telehealth in healthcare. When the pandemic first started, the government came out and basically said, "Hey, you know what? It doesn't matter if you see a patient over video, audio, in person, we're going to pay you the same." And that was a complete game changer. And so ever since then, we saw telehealth as a way to really equalize healthcare access. It became a way for us to also implement best practices and preoperative medical clearance without the restrictions of physical boundaries and barriers. So that's kind of sort of the origin story. We've been going for 2 years now. We've done over 1,200 medical clearances through telehealth and also with at-home testing. And we've been able to basically apply the same rigorous clinical guidelines and standards around preoperative medical clearance to every single patient. And so as a result, we haven't had any same day cancellations. We haven't had any medical delays for surgery. And the patients love it, the convenience of it, the efficiency. And so I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later. But that's sort of the genesis and kind of how this all started.
That's great. Yeah, and sounds like quite the track record so far, in your early stages here, these early years. And I recall the how it was with the pandemic. The first time did a telehealth visit with an eye doctor, and that was
Yeah.
like kind of different at the time, but yeah,
Right.
seems to be the norm now. So
Yeah.
that's really nice. What would you say is the one thing that kind of sets your practice apart from others?
Well, I think a few things. Obviously there's a lot of telehealth companies and providers that are using telehealth. So, that really no longer is kind of unique. I think the fact that we're focusing on a specific medical encounter, and we're getting really good at it, and we have a lot of data behind it, and we're able to apply the best standards to this specific medical visit. Preoperative medical clearance is something that is typically done by your primary care physician. Sometimes it can be done through an urgent care, but none of these practices specialize in preoperative medical clearance. And so I think one of the unique things about us is we're one of the very, 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 very few companies who's really focusing in on this space and really trying to bring evidence-based and the highest clinical guidelines and standards to this specific medical encounter. And then I think the other thing that sets us apart is that we not only are just doing the visit through telehealth, but we're also taking ownership of the testing. So we send patients a medical device kit to their home, and we kind of let them do we guide them through a video call on how to do like their blood pressure, right? So we can take their blood pressure. We can check their pulse oximeter, which is basically like how much, how high, how well their oxygen is saturating in their blood. We can do an EKG from the comfort of the patient's home. And we can also listen to their heart and lungs from home. So I think, with combining the telehealth visit, the clinical evidence-based guidelines, and putting everybody through the same standards, and then also offering at-home testing, I think that really sets us apart. In addition to focusing on this specific sort of clinical space that we've chosen. So we don't do primary care, we don't do internal medicine, we don't do any other types of interactions. We really focus on and only do preoperative medical clearance. So I think those are some of the few things that kind of uh, make us stand out from everyone else.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things that we tend to focus on the show is that one thing that kind of like makes you your superpower, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you've definitely found yours. And you've been able to focus on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now the kits, I'm kind of like curious what kind of equipment is included in that.
Yeah. So it's four types of medical devices, and then we also include a tablet in the device. We basically ship this kit out, and it's a box that we designed. We procured all of these devices. All of the devices are FDA cleared, and they're all basically, highest medical grade quality. The first device is a blood pressure cuff, and it's a cuff that you wrap around your wrist, your left wrist, and you kind of let your arm outstretched, elevated, and you press a button, and about 30 seconds, it'll give you a blood pressure and a heart rate. It's pretty accurate. And we're talking you through the whole thing. So we kind of tell you, okay, wrap it around your left wrist. We check it, make sure it's in the right place. Then the second one is a pulse oximeter. So it's like a little device that goes around your finger, and you just put your finger in there, you press a button, and it'll give you a percentage. And that percentage is your oxygen saturation. Normally people have 95 and above oxygen saturation. So that gives us a window into how well your lungs are functioning, how well you're oxygenating blood. The third device is a virtual stethoscope. So it's it's like the round size of the end of a stethoscope that you normally get when you go to your doctor's office when they listen to your heart and lungs. And so we just tell the patients, okay, put the stethoscope in the center of your chest and just move it a little bit to the right. And we're on a video call with them so we can kind of see where it is on their body. And so we're able to guide them to put it in the right place. And we're also controlling the tablet that they have at home. So we're remotely logged in. So the patient doesn't have to push any buttons. They don't have to click anything. We take over that whole process. And so we're able to press record, and it records their heart sounds. And then we ask them, okay, now I want you to put it on the left side of your chest, take a deep breath, and then we can press record and we can listen to their breath sounds remotely. So it's really cool because it allows us to mimic an in-person office visit that you would typically have without the traffic, the parking, the 2 or 3 hour taking out of your day, taking off of work, all the inconveniences of, living in a major city. Or for that matter, the other opposite, the other extreme is that people live in rural environments, or patients that live in areas that don't have a physician's office and for a 20-mile, 30-mile radius. And think about the opportunity that they have now to get really good care. So, and then the fourth one is an EKG device. So it's like a belt. You put it around your chest, and we're talking you through the whole thing. And then you press a button, and then we press a button, and within 30 seconds, we get a full 12 lead EKG. And so it's really revolutionary, the fact that we can do this now. And it's really been only in the last 2 or 3 years that the technology has finally caught up to the requirements, the clinical requirements that we have, to do some of these tests from home. So it's really, really cool. The patients love it. A lot of patients are like, wow, this is so great. I didn't have to, this is really cool. I could just put this on. I didn't have to take out 3 hours of my day to go to the doctor's office. So those are the four devices, then with the tablet. And then basically the only thing the patient has to do is just put everything back into the box. We give them a return shipping label, pre-printed. So they just slap it on top of the box, and then they take it to either postal service or UPS, whichever one that we send them to. And that's it. That's all they have to do, really. So,
Wow. Yeah,
yeah,
sounds like a great service, and I'm sure you get a lot of positive feedback. And
yeah,
seems like there's a wide open market
yeah,
for
absolutely. Absolutely.
what have been some of the challenges that you've encountered as you built and tried to expand the services here?
Yeah, it's a good question. Early on, before we had come up with this device box and procured our own devices, we were trying to figure out, okay, well, we can do the visit through telehealth. That's easy. But how do we do the testing? And so initially we were sending people to urgent cares and like other physician offices to do the testing. And that just proved to be really unreliable. And so we kind of said, okay, this is not going to work. Like we have to basically create our own process from scratch to do this. And so that's what we did. So that was one major challenge early on. I think, moving forward, it's funny, like when the pandemic first happened, there was this huge pendulum shift toward telehealth. And then as the pandemic ended and as we've sort of gone back to life as usual, the pendulum has kind of swung a little bit more toward away from telehealth. People want to do stuff in person. But however, it's funny, most patients choose the telehealth option. They would much rather be seen at home. It's now a viable, commercially available technology. However, there are still some people that want to be seen in person, and that's okay. And then, we've encountered some hesitancy and some resistance from even like medical establishment, like, surgeons who are more senior, uh, may not be super comfortable with the idea of telehealth and remote testing. And there's still this idea that being seen in person, there's somehow some sort of magic to it, that it's like, it's like they feel better about it. So, we're still trying to push through that. And I think that's going to be a major, really the only kind of resistance that we kind of have to pushing this out to the masses and the public. So I think it's just a lot of education, a lot of just trying to tell people, hey, this is a really familiar thing. Like the technology is really good. Like we can mimic an in-person visit. We listen to the heart and lungs. We do the EKG. We see the patient over video. You can actually tell a lot from seeing somebody over video. It's you can mimic a lot of the physical exam. And for our specific purpose in preoperative medical clearance, really over 90% of it is what the patient tells us, like, and the questions that we ask. So we ask a lot of questions, and a lot of questions that are preoperatively focused. So we ask, tell me about your previous surgeries. Tell me about how you did with anesthesia. We ask about medications. We ask about vitamins. So there are certain vitamins that interact negatively with surgery that we tell people to stop, a week before. A lot of people are taking Ozempic or Mounjaro, the weight loss injection medications. So those obviously you don't want to take for a week or two before your surgery. We screen people for sleep apnea. So there's been a lot of people that did not previously know they had sleep apnea, and as a result of our interactions and as a result of our questionnaires and everything, they score very high for having sleep apnea. So they end up getting sleep tested, and then obviously, substance use, alcohol, smoking, drug use. One of the biggest things that we tell patients is like the most important thing you can do before your surgery is to stop drinking and stop smoking. That's like Like that's going to be the biggest impact on your post-operative recovery. So there's a lot of things that we focus on in the pre-op space that I don't think most other doctors do, in the primary care physicians or urgent care physicians, because they have so many other things going on their plates. And so we're really able to do a specific type of visit really well. We go in depth and very specific for this type of. So I think, we'll probably have a lot of resistance moving forward, still more, but I think with education and with time and with acceptance, I think patients will be allowed to have this technology, you know, take advantage of it.
Yeah, very good points. I can definitely relate with the work that I do with like different training and meetings I do virtually. A lot of times people feel like it's hard to like focus and be present. A lot of times it's the technology. They're just not fully confident with the use, how they can use the technology. And like I said, I think it's just probably just going to be time, education, and we'll get there.
Yeah.
And then also selling the fact that the convenience of it, like, hey, you don't have to drive those, that hour commute or whatever back and forth. The
Yeah.
pod focus on the positives.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, switching gears a little bit with everything that you see going on in the world, we hear about, on a daily basis. How do you see AI impacting your practice and just, pre-op in general, medical pre-op in general?
I mean, I think I'm very optimistic about artificial intelligence and its use in the medical space. In terms of our process and what we're planning on doing, we recognize that we ask a lot of the same questions to a lot of people. And so we're always looking for ways to kind of automate this whole process. And so in the future, we are planning on uh, creating an app, a very user friendly app for patients to be able to kind of answer some of these questions themselves with AI built into it. So imagine um, patients putting in like raw data and me being the physician and seeing them, uh, what would normally be a 30 to 40-minute visit could be even more efficient into like a 10-minute visit, to kind of go through all of their answers and imagine sort of an AI algorithm operating in the background that kind of makes sense of all the data, puts it together in a medically understandable way for the physician or for the provider, and would be able to kind of give them a risk score, you know, based on information that we feed it and based on the most current evidence-based guidelines. For example, a 65-year-old man, smoker, not particularly physically active, it would ask him a bunch of questions and then it would spit back like a score, like a risk score of, this would be the risk of cardiovascular events like perioperatively, postoperatively. This would be the risk of like wound healing issues. And so I'm very, very excited. I think the technology is there. The algorithm, is going to be there. We're going to build it in the future. And so I think that's going to be really the next step of preoperative medical care is how do we get more efficient at this? How do we automate certain things that are right now too manual and just don't make sense to be manual? But we also want to recognize that from the patient standpoint, people want to have the human interaction with a physician. They don't, I think it would be a mistake to completely replace the physician and just have people go into an app and just deal with a machine. I don't think that's ever really going to be the case. I think what's going to be the case is physicians are still going to be around, but they're going to be augmented and really kind of they won't have any blind sides anymore and the information is going to be most up to date, and so they'll be able to make better decisions. So it's really the AI is going to really be a clinical decision support guidance tool. It's going to be operating in the background, but I think it's still important for patients to have that human interaction because there's something very special about the patient doctor relationship. It's one of the oldest relationships that's been around, thousands and thousands of years since the date of Hippocrates. So I think we should, as physicians, we need to honor that and we need to make sure that we still have that human interaction with people because I think it's very important to maintain that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Coming from a medical background myself as a medical assistant in the military, with that, you can't replace that human interaction,
Right.
the human side of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there any concerns that you may have? I know some people are kind of, worried about, the, kind of the darker side or, making some missteps with AI. What do you see in that?
Sure. I mean, with any technology, there's always pitfalls. There's always ways that it can be misused and misappropriated. I think going back to the previous, I think really the biggest thing that we as physicians have to make sure that doesn't happen is that the machine or the AI just completely replaces human beings because so much of medicine is a lot of it is data driven, but some of it is an art form. And I just go back to some of the conversations that I've had with patients, mostly back to my days seeing patients in the hospital. There would be very, very difficult and challenging conversations that I would have with patients about, for example, very bad diagnoses. Like how do you tell a patient that they've just been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, right? That's a very, very difficult and challenging conversation to have. Would any patient want an AI or a machine to have that conversation with them? I don't think so, right? So there's a humanistic aspect to this that we have to maintain. And I think that's one of the dangers of AI is that human beings and humanism just recedes in the background and the machine is put in the foreground with patients. And I think that would be a complete disaster if that ever did happen. So I think we as physicians have to really guard against that, and we have to really, I think we should embrace the use of AI as to guide us to make decisions, but we should never really, abdicate that responsibility to a machine.
Yeah. We should always drive AI. Don't let it drive us.
Absolutely.
You mentioned, the app that you see coming online for your practice in the future. Is there anything else within the next 3 to 12 months that benchmarks that you want to achieve?
Yeah, obviously we want to expand the pre-op business. We want to expand market share. Right now we're operating, we have a lot of plastic surgeons that use us, a lot of orthopedic surgery that uses us, but we want to expand into more surgical specialties because we think pre-op medical clearance offering a standardized approach to this should be really done across all surgical specialties. Every patient should be able to take advantage of this, I think. In addition to that, I'm really excited that we're bringing on a cardiologist to our team, and she is a heart failure specialist. And so she's fellowship trained in heart failure. Uh, one of the major challenges in the current healthcare system is caring for a heart failure patient. And so, a lot of patients with heart failure, they go in and out of the hospital a lot. They spend a lot of time in the hospital. They get discharged from the hospital. They go right back to the hospital again, unfortunately. And there's a lot of initiatives that have been driven by the government and by insurance companies to try to prevent all these frequent admissions for heart failure patients. And so I'm really proud to be able to bring on this cardiologist. So she's a heart failure specialist, and she's going to put together a protocol where we're going to try to make a dent into this space where these patients are just getting bounced back and forth from hospital to home, hospital to home, hospital to home. And a lot of it is because people don't have access to healthcare. They need to be seen pretty frequently. They need to be seen maybe every 3 days, every 5 days, a week or so. And our outpatient healthcare system is not built for that. It's the infrastructure doesn't exist. It's like a major donut hole in our system. And so I think the only way to fill that donut hole is through telehealth because it allows us to see the patient 2 or 3 times a week. We ask them how they're doing. We check their weight. We see if they've gained any fluid weight. We adjust their medications, all in an effort to try to make sure that they're healthy and that they don't have to get readmitted back to the hospital. So that's one thing that we're going to be working on in parallel with the preoperative clearance path that I'm really, really excited about. I think we can make a real positive difference in a lot of people's lives. Heart failure is really difficult. There's been a lot of the government now, so Medicare, CMS will penalize hospitals if they have high readmission rates for heart failure. And so not only is it a healthcare issue with patients, but it's also becoming a big financial issue for hospitals and health systems. And so if there's any way that we can put a dent in that, I think that's going to be really well received and it should make a huge difference in the system. So we're excited about launching that path soon.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah, a lot of innovation on the horizon. So there must be a lower cost for providing telehealth, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so much less expensive than a hospital stay, that's for sure. And, and now what we can do is we can monitor people with, these Bluetooth scales, blood pressure cuffs. So we can send them equipment at home and get on a telehealth appointment for like maybe 15 or 20 minutes and check their blood pressure, check their weight. And if it's, within the certain numbers, we adjust their medications. And we do this, when they get out of the hospital. Right when they get out of the hospital, it's the most sensitive time. So you probably want to do it maybe twice a week, maybe 3 times a week for a high risk patient. And then after that, it gets less and less, maybe twice a week and then once a week for, a good maybe 3, 4 months. And unfortunately, our healthcare system is not set up to do those types of appointments. A lot of these folks have difficulty accessing care. They may be disabled. They may not have access to transportation. A lot of different socioeconomic factors play a role into this. And so, why not? Why are we forcing these people to to go to the doctor's office when they can get the same level of care in their home? It just makes so much more sense.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer,
Yeah,
really. It's like,
absolutely.
well, Shereen, what advice would you give any other physicians looking to follow in your footsteps and maybe open a similar type practice?
It's funny, like when physicians get together and we talk about stuff, we love to complain and just like moan about the healthcare system and how bad it is and how inefficient it is and how disjointed it is. And so what I would tell my physician colleagues is, like I saw an issue with pre-ops, and so I kind of went after tackling it. But there's so many other issues out there in healthcare and, physicians are really bright, intelligent people. Many of them are small business owners in their own right, in their private practices. So who better to change the healthcare system than physicians? Like we know all the pitfalls, we know the holes, we know patients, we know medical care. I mean, we know a lot of stuff. And so I would just say if you're thinking about a particular inefficiency or a problem or a donut hole in the system, I would just tackle it, embrace it, figure out a solution for it, and don't be afraid to go out there and try it. Just do a basic sort of trial for 30, 60, 90 days with a few number of patients and see if you can make a difference. And if so, then that's all you need to know. And then you can scale up from there. I would say just trust your innovative and medical education and residency and all that stuff that you went through. I think sky's the limit when a physician puts their mind to it.
That's great advice. Yeah. One of my previous guests talked about, I think that there's like several million physicians in the United States
Yeah.
practicing, but yet there's only 300,000 who are in private practice. So he felt like there needs to be more. So
Yeah, and
that's
that number is going down. So unfortunately, that is a disturbing trend in our healthcare system is that more and more physicians are becoming employed with these big health systems that are owned by corporations, and very few physicians are being independent anymore and having their own practices and practicing medicine. I don't know where this is going to go in 5 or 10 years. The trend is definitely more toward corporate and less toward private practice, which I think is not good for patient care. So I don't know. Perhaps we'll have something that'll happen in the interim. They maybe break that trend in some way, and perhaps it'll be the adoption of telemedicine. I mean, I think that's probably something that physicians can do. That's low cost. That allows them to keep their costs low and be able to reach patients in a broader audience. And so I think telemedicine actually has a lot to do with possibly even reversing that trend at some point.
Let's hope so. Yeah. And we know it's not easy to go out on your own like you've done, but yeah, there's definitely a need, there's a space for it. So yeah, hope hopefully more physicians do choose to go that route.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we're almost done, Shamim. It's been a great discussion. Where can people find you? Like social media or website?
Yeah. So for My PreOp, they can go to www.mypreop.org. Patients can go on there and make an appointment with us if they're having a surgery and they want to get a pre-op done. They can book their own appointments online. We're on social. We're at Instagram at MyPreOp is our Instagram. You can kind of see a lot of videos. We have a lot of educational videos on different types of surgeries. We're on Facebook also. We're on LinkedIn, My PreOp on LinkedIn. What else? Obviously, email, phone number is all on our website.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll make sure that all those are in the show notes. They can find you and reach out if they want to. For me, I really appreciate you being on today. It's been a great discussion, and I wish you nothing but the absolute success and the best in what you're doing with my pre-op. I'll look forward to following, the work that you're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. Thanks for having me on. It was really fun to talk about a lot of this stuff with healthcare, and yeah, it was great. Thank you for the discussion. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure.